The Wisconsin Investigation. A cryptozoologist's account. Dr. Marion Thatcher, independent cryptozoologist. Field report, Dogman of northern Wisconsin. Vilas and Oneida Counties, Wisconsin, October 2028. Prologue. The call I didn't want to answer. The phone rang at 7 in the morning on a Tuesday in late September. I was making coffee, looking out at the autumn leaves in my backyard, feeling genuinely good for the first time in over a year. The Nightcrawler's investigation had been 6 months ago, and I'd spent the time since writing, consulting remotely on habitat conservation projects, and generally staying away from fieldwork. My therapist said I was making real progress. The nightmares had mostly stopped. I could think about Michigan without my chest tightening. I'd even started enjoying my work again, approaching it with the wonder and curiosity that had originally drawn me to cryptozoology. Then I answered the phone, and everything changed. Dr. Thatcher? This is Sheriff Daniel Kowalski from Marquette County. We spoke during your Wendigo investigation. My hand tightened on the phone. Sheriff, is everything all right? No, it's not. I need your help. There's a situation in northern Wisconsin, just across the border from the Up. People are being attacked. 3 incidents in the last month, 2 fatalities. The descriptions, Marion, it sounds like something similar to what you documented in Michigan, but different. More aggressive. More predatory. You should contact wildlife authorities. State police. I'm not. We have. They're treating it as bear attacks or a rabid wolf pack. But I've seen the evidence, talked to the survivors. This isn't a bear. It's not wolves. It's something else, something that walks upright, something intelligent and malicious. The local law enforcement is overwhelmed, and people are terrified. Sheriff, I can't. After Michigan, after the Wendigo, I made a decision to step back from dangerous fieldwork. I'm not equipped, mentally or emotionally, to investigate something that's actively killing people. I understand, and I wouldn't ask if there was anyone else. But Marion, one of the survivors, is Marcus Running Bear. The world seemed to tilt. Marcus, my guide in Michigan, the man who'd stood with me in that frozen forest, who'd helped me document the Wendigo, who'd been part of the operation that killed those creatures. What happened to him? He was guiding a hunting party in the Nicolet National Forest. Something attacked their camp at night. 2 men were killed. Marcus survived, but he's not doing well. Physically, he'll recover, but mentally, he keeps saying it was worse than the Wendigo. He keeps saying he needs you, that you're the only one who'll understand what they're dealing with. Where is he? Hospital in Eagle River. He asked me to call you. Said to tell you he knows what he's asking, knows what it costs, but that people are going to keep dying if someone doesn't stop this thing. I stood in my kitchen, coffee forgotten, feeling the careful structure of my recovery threatening to collapse. Every instinct I'd developed over the last year was screaming at me to say no, to maintain my boundaries, to protect my mental health. But it was Marcus, and people were dying. I need to think about it. Give me 24 hours. I understand. But Marion, whatever you decide soon. This thing is hunting actively. Every day we wait is another chance for it to kill again. After hanging up, I sat on my back porch for an hour, watching the leaves fall, trying to reconcile what I wanted to do with what I felt obligated to do. Then I called my therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, agreed to see me that afternoon for an emergency session. I sat in her familiar office, the space that had become a sanctuary over the past year, and told her about the call. Your first instinct was to say no, she observed. That's significant progress. A year ago, you wouldn't have hesitated. You would have immediately agreed. Consequences be damned. But I can't say no. Marcus is hurt. People are dying. I have expertise that could help. You can say no. You're choosing not to. There's a difference. Let's explore that choice. We spent the next hour discussing my motivations, my fears, and my capacity. Dr. Chun didn't tell me what to do. She never did. But she helped me understand what I was really grappling with. Marion, you've made tremendous progress in healing from your Michigan trauma. You've rediscovered joy in your work. You've established healthy boundaries. You've learned to say no to dangerous investigations. Going back into a similar situation, possibly an even more dangerous one, risks undoing that progress. I know, but you also feel obligated. Marcus helped you, supported you, protected you. Now he's asking for help, and people are dying. Those are powerful motivators. So what do I do? Only you can answer that. But I want you to be honest with yourself about several things. First, are you strong enough to do this without it destroying the progress you've made? Second, are you going because you genuinely believe you can help, or because you feel guilty saying no? Third, what are your limits? What will you do if you encounter something that triggers your PTSD or puts you back in the psychological state you were in after Michigan? I don't know the answers to those questions. Then maybe you need to find them before you make a decision. I left her office without clarity but with better questions. That evening, I called Marcus Running Bear at the hospital. Marcus Running Bear. Marcus answered on the third ring. His voice was strained, exhausted, nothing like the calm, confident man I'd known in Michigan. Marion. Sheriff Kowalski said he'd call you. He did. Marcus, what happened? We were guiding a hunting party. 5 clients, me and another guide named Tom. Second night out, something came into our camp. We heard it first, footsteps, heavy, circling us. Then we saw it in the firelight. His voice broke. Marion, it was like a wolf standing upright, but bigger, 7, maybe 8 feet tall. The face was wolf-like, but the eyes were wrong. Too intelligent, too aware. It looked at each of us like it was deciding something. Then it attacked. Tom grabbed his rifle, got one shot off before it was on him. The sound he made. Marcus stopped, breathing hard. 2 of the clients ran. Caught them both. The rest of us scattered. I made it to a tree, climbed up. It stayed at the base for what felt like hours, just watching me. Waiting. When dawn came, it left. I climbed down and found, Marion, I've seen death. I was in the military before becoming a guide. But what that thing did to those men. I'm so sorry, Marcus. The authorities think it was a bear or wolves. But I've dealt with bears and wolves my entire life. This was neither. It moved like a human, thought like a human, but it was an animal. Predator. And it's still out there, Marion. It's hunting. Why me? There are other researchers, other people who... Because you've faced something like this before. You understand what it's like to be hunted by something that shouldn't exist. You know how to document it, how to convince people it's real, how to stop it. And because... He hesitated. Because I'm scared, Marion. I'm truly scared. And I need someone who understands that fear, who won't judge me for it. We talked for another 20 minutes. Marcus gave me details about the attacks, the location, what the survivors had seen and experienced. With each detail, I felt the dread building, the familiar weight of pursuing something dangerous settling back onto my shoulders. After hanging up, I sat in silence for a long time. Then I made my decision. I would go, but this time I would do it differently. Day 1. Preparation. Before leaving for Wisconsin, I spent 3 days preparing. Not just equipment and logistics, but mentally and emotionally. I had sessions with Dr. Chun to establish clear boundaries and exit strategies. I developed a protocol for recognizing when I was becoming obsessed or traumatized, with concrete steps to disengage before reaching a crisis point. I also reached out to my support network. I called Dr. Blackwood from Michigan, who'd warned me about Wendigo psychosis. I contacted Dr. Martinez from California, who'd helped me remember the joy of cryptozoology with the nightcrawlers. I told them where I was going and why, and asked them to check in with me regularly. Marion, are you sure about this? Dr. Blackwood asked. No, but I'm doing it anyway, and I'm doing it with my eyes open this time, with support in place, with the understanding that I can leave if it becomes too much. What do you know about the Dogman? Not much. I know it's reported primarily in Michigan and Wisconsin. Described as wolf-like but bipedal, very tall, aggressive. Associated with violent encounters more than simple sightings. It's considered one of the most dangerous cryptids in North American folklore, Dr. Blackwood said. Unlike Bigfoot or even the Wendigo, the Dogman is consistently described as hostile. It doesn't just defend territory, it hunts. If what Marcus encountered is a dogman, you need to be extremely careful. I will be. I promise. I also did something I hadn't done before. I hired a security consultant. His name was James McAllister, former military, now working in private security for researchers and journalists in dangerous areas. I explained the situation without mentioning cryptids, just saying I was investigating dangerous wildlife. You want armed protection for fieldwork, he said. Yes, someone who can handle unexpected situations, who won't panic, who understands that the threat might not be conventional wildlife. I've worked with cryptozoologists before. I know the drill. I don't care what it is. If it's a threat, I'll deal with it. My rate is $2,000 a day plus expenses. That's fine. How soon can you be ready? Tomorrow. Day 4, arrival in Eagle River. Eagle River, Wisconsin is a small town in the Northwoods, surrounded by lakes and dense forest. It's a tourist destination in summer, a quiet outpost in winter. In late October, it was in transition, the tourists mostly gone, the winter residents preparing for the harsh months ahead. I checked into a hotel and immediately went to visit Marcus at the hospital. He was in a private room, recovering from deep lacerations to his leg and arm. He looked older than he had in Michigan, worn down by pain and trauma. Marion, you came. Of course I came. I sat beside his bed. Tell me everything again. Every detail you remember. We spent 2 hours going through the attack. Marcus described the creature with remarkable precision, even drawing sketches of what he'd seen. The details were consistent with Dogman reports: lupin features, upright posture, approximately 7 to 8 feet tall, covered in dark fur, with arms that were proportionally longer than human. But there were details that troubled me. Marcus described the eyes as aware and calculating, suggesting intelligence beyond typical animal behavior. He described how the creature had systematically attacked, separating the group, pursuing runners while blocking escape routes, returning to finish what it had started. It wasn't random, Marcus said. It had a strategy. It knew we had weapons, knew we'd try to fight back, and it planned around that. Marion, this thing thinks like a predator that's evolved to hunt humans specifically. Where exactly did this happen? He marked a location on a topographical map, deep in the Nicolet National Forest, miles from any road or trail. The area was densely wooded, with numerous lakes and swamps creating natural barriers. Have there been other attacks in that area? Two I know of. A hiker found dead last month, initially attributed to a bear, and a fisherman who disappeared 3 weeks ago. They never found his body. The authorities don't see a pattern, but I do. This thing has a territory, and it's defending it violently. Or hunting in it deliberately. Yeah, that's what terrifies me. I don't think this is defensive behavior. I think it's predatory. I think it kills because that's what it does. Before leaving, I asked Marcus the hardest question. Do you want me to try to capture evidence for protection, or do you want me to help eliminate it? He didn't hesitate. It can't be protected, Marion. Not after what it's done. This isn't like the skunk ape or the night crawlers. This thing is a killer. It needs to be stopped. Day 5, the first scene. With James McAllister providing security, I visited the site of Marcus's attack. We hiked in with local law enforcement. A young deputy named Sarah Voss who'd been first on the scene after the attack. The campsite had been processed as a crime scene, but much of the evidence remained visible. The tent where Tom, the other guide, had died was shredded, the fabric torn in long, parallel gashes. Claw marks scarred nearby trees at heights of 7 to 8 feet. Most disturbingly, there were tracks. They were canine, clearly showing 4 toes and claws, but enormous. Each print was approximately 8 inches long and 6 inches wide. The stride pattern was bipedal, with steps approximately 4 feet apart. Whatever had made these tracks had been walking on 2 legs despite having paw-like feet. I photographed and measured everything, made plaster casts of the clearest prints, collected hair samples from where the creature had brushed against trees. James maintained a perimeter watch, rifle ready, scanning the forest constantly. You seeing anything? I asked him. No, but I'm getting that feeling. You know, the one like something's watching. Prey animals get it when predators are near. So do humans if they're paying attention. I felt it too. That prickling awareness, that instinctive certainty that we weren't alone. The forest was too quiet, the birds and squirrels conspicuously absent. "We should move," Deputy Voss said nervously. "This area doesn't feel safe." We finished our documentation and hiked back to the vehicles. As we reached the trailhead, I looked back at the forest and saw movement. Something large, dark, and upright, visible for just a moment between the trees before it vanished. "Did you see that?" James asked. "I saw it. That wasn't a bear." "No, it wasn't." Day 6. The historical pattern. I spent the next day at the Eagle River Public Library and the Vilas County Historical Society, researching reports of unusual animal encounters in the region. What I found was disturbing. The Dogman legends in Wisconsin went back decades, possibly centuries. Native American tribes in the region had stories of wolf spirits or wolfmen that walked upright and hunted humans. French fur trappers in the 1700s reported encounters with loups-garous, werewolves, in the northern forests. In modern times, reports clustered around certain areas, with a notable spike every 7 to 10 years. Some researchers had identified a pattern. The creature seemed to be most active in years ending in 7, 1987, 1997, 2007, 2017. We were now in 2028, which didn't fit the pattern, but the attacks were undeniably happening. I found newspaper accounts of mysterious deaths and disappearances. 1936. A logging camp abandoned after workers reported being stalked by a wolfman. 1972. A teenage couple attacked while camping. The boy killed. The girl survived but was traumatized. 1989. A hunter found dead with injuries inconsistent with known wildlife. 2006. Multiple sightings along Highway 18, witnesses describing a large wolf-like creature running on 2 legs. The pattern was clear. This wasn't a new phenomenon. Whatever was attacking people now had been doing so for generations. The difference was that now the attacks were more frequent and more violent. I also found something else. A local hunter named Gerald Hoffman who'd been researching the Dogman for 30 years and claimed to have encountered it multiple times. I called him that afternoon. Day 7. Gerald Hoffman. Gerald Hoffman lived in a cabin 10 miles outside Eagle River, accessible only by a rutted dirt road. He was in his 70s, grizzled and weathered, with the wary eyes of someone who'd seen things that challenged his understanding of reality. His cabin was filled with research materials, maps marked with sighting locations, plaster casts of tracks, photographs of claw marks on trees, and newspaper clippings about mysterious deaths. It reminded me of my own office, but with a more obsessive quality. "Dr. Thatcher," he said, shaking my hand with a grip that was surprisingly strong. "Heard about you. You documented the Wendigo up in Michigan. That takes guts. And nearly cost me my sanity. Mr. Hoffman, tell me about the Dogman." He poured us coffee and we sat at his table, surrounded by his decades of research. I first saw it in 1992. I was deer hunting, deep in the forest, and I heard something big moving through the brush. I thought it was a deer or a bear, so I waited rifle ready. Then it stepped into view. It was standing upright like a man, but it was covered in dark fur and had the head of a wolf. The face was elongated, the snout prominent, but the eyes were positioned forward like a predator. And those eyes, they looked at me with intelligence, with awareness. It knew what I was, knew what the rifle was, and it was deciding whether I was worth attacking. We stared at each other for maybe 30 seconds. Then it turned and walked away. Not running, just walking, like it had dismissed me as unimportant. "MT, how many times have you seen it since?" "JH, for more times over the years. Always in the fall, always in remote areas. Twice I've heard it. A sound like howling but deeper, more guttural, with an almost human quality. And I found evidence countless times, tracks, claw marks, kill sites where deer have been torn apart in ways that don't match bear or wolf predation. MT, what do you think it is?" "JH, honestly, I don't know. It's not a wolf. Wolves don't walk upright for extended periods, and they're not that large. It's not a bear, the body structure is all wrong. Could be an unknown species, something that's managed to avoid scientific documentation. Or it could be something else, something that doesn't fit our biological categories. MT. Do you think there's more than one? JH. Definitely. I've seen tracks in multiple locations simultaneously, suggesting at least 2 or 3 individuals. There might be a small population breeding and sustaining itself in these forests. The territory is vast enough to support them if they're apex predators. MT. The recent attacks, the increased aggression, what's causing that? JH. I've been thinking about that. One theory is that their territory is shrinking due to development and increased human recreation. They're being forced into more frequent contact with people. Another theory is that we're dealing with a rogue individual, one that's developed a taste for human prey. Animals sometimes become man-eaters, tigers, lions, even bears. Maybe this creature has done the same. He showed me his collection of evidence. The plaster casts were impressive, clearly canine prints but far larger than any wolf, with a stride pattern that demonstrated consistent bipedal locomotion. The photographs showed claw marks, partially consumed deer carcasses, and disturbed campsites. Mr. Hoffman, have you shared this evidence with authorities? I tried. They dismissed it as hoaxing or misidentification. After a while, you stop trying to convince people. You just document what you find and accept that most folks won't believe it. I believe it. I've seen too much to dismiss reports like yours. But belief doesn't solve the problem. This thing is killing people. How do we stop it? He was quiet for a long moment. You don't stop it, Dr. Thatcher. You either avoid it or you kill it. And killing it won't be easy. This creature is smart, fast, and strong. It knows these forests better than any human. If you're planning to hunt it, you'd better be prepared for it to hunt you back. Day 8. The plan. That evening, I met with James McAllister and Deputy Voss to develop a strategy. We sat in my hotel room, maps spread across the bed, discussing how to proceed. Our goal is documentation first, elimination second, I said. I need clear evidence of what we're dealing with: video, photographs, physical samples. If possible, I want to capture or dart it for study. But if it attacks, if there's no other option, then lethal force is authorized. You're talking about hunting something that's already proven it can kill experienced outdoorsmen, James said. We need more than 3 people for this. Agreed. Deputy Voss, can you get authorization for a larger operation? Maybe, but the sheriff is still treating this as bear attacks. I'd need concrete evidence that we're dealing with something else. Then that's step 1. We need to capture this thing on camera in a way that can't be dismissed. We need to force the authorities to take it seriously. We identified a strategy. Set up observation posts in the area where the attacks had occurred, using trail cameras, motion sensors, and direct observation. If we could document the creature, we could make the case for a larger, more organized response. What if it attacks us first? Deputy Voss asked. Then James shoots it and we have a body. Not ideal from a research perspective, but it solves the immediate problem. James checked his rifle. If it comes down to that, I won't hesitate. I've read enough about this thing to know it's dangerous. Protecting you is my primary job. Everything else is secondary. Day 9, the first night. We established an observation post in the Nicolet National Forest, about 2 miles from where Marcus had been attacked. James had scouted the location. A slight ridge overlooking a valley with good sight lines and multiple escape routes. We set up just before dusk. Trail cameras positioned at ground level. Infrared sensors creating a perimeter, night vision equipment for observation, and our own shelter. A small tent with clear views in all directions. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped sharply. October in northern Wisconsin is cold, the promise of winter already present in the air. We sat in silence, watching and listening, rifles and cameras ready. Around 10 p.m., the forest went quiet. The ambient sounds, insects, distant owls, wind in the trees, faded to silence. James and I exchanged glances. We both knew what that meant. Something was nearby. I scanned with my night vision scope, slowly panning across the tree line. First, I saw nothing. Then, at the edge of the scope's range, I saw movement. Something large and upright, moving between trees with deliberate purpose. It was circling us. "James," I whispered. 3 o'clock, approximately 80 yards. Moving left. He shifted his position, rifle raised. Through his scope's night vision, he tracked the movement. "I see it. Too dark for positive identification, but it's big. And it's definitely bipedal." Deputy Voss had her sidearm drawn, her breathing rapid. "What do? We wait. Document if possible, defend if necessary. Don't shoot unless it attacks." The creature continued circling, staying just at the edge of clear visibility. I could make out the general shape, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a fluid gait that was neither fully human nor fully canine. It was assessing us, watching, deciding. Then it howled. The sound was like nothing I'd ever heard. Deeper than a wolf's howl, with harmonics that seemed almost vocal. It resonated in my chest, triggered every primal fear instinct humans possess. Deputy Voss gasped, and even James tensed. The howl was answered. From our left, perhaps 100 yards away, another howl. Then a third, from behind us. "There's more than one," James said quietly. "We're surrounded." "Pack behavior," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "They're coordinating." For the next 20 minutes, we stayed absolutely still while the creatures circled us, occasionally howling to each other. I could hear them moving through the brush, sometimes close enough that I could hear their breathing, deep, heavy respirations that suggested large lung capacity. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The creatures moved away, their howls fading into the distance. Gradually, the normal forest sounds returned. We waited another hour before relaxing our vigilance. None of us slept that night. Day 10. The evidence. In the morning, we searched the perimeter. We found tracks, multiple sets, from at least 3 different individuals. The prints were consistent with what I'd seen at Marcus's attack site. Large, canine, but with a bipedal stride pattern. We also found scat, large, dark, and containing hair and bone fragments from recent prey. I collected samples for analysis. Most significantly, one of the trail cameras had captured footage. It showed a creature approaching the camera, presumably investigating it. The video was only a few seconds long, but it was remarkable. The creature was massive, easily 7.5 feet tall, covered in dark brown fur, with a distinctly canine head. The snout was elongated, the ears pointed and mobile, the eyes reflecting the camera's infrared light with an eerie greenish glow. The body was humanoid in structure but powerfully muscled, with arms that hung longer than human proportions. It looked directly at the camera, not with animal curiosity, but with what appeared to be recognition and intelligence. Then it reached out with one clawed hand and deliberately knocked the camera over, ending the recording. "It knew what the camera was," Deputy Voss said, watching the footage with wide eyes. "It understood it was being recorded and stopped it." "Tool recognition," I said. "That suggests cognitive abilities well beyond typical canids. This thing isn't just smart for an animal, it's intelligent in a way that approaches human cognition." "Can we use this?" Deputy Voss asked. "As evidence? We can try, but skeptics will say it's a person in a costume or CGI. We need more. Multiple angles, clearer footage, or physical evidence that can't be disputed." James was examining the tracks. "Dr. Thatcher, look at this." He pointed to a set of prints that led away from our position. Beside them, slightly overlapping, was a smaller set, perhaps 2/3 the size of the larger prints. "Parent and offspring?" I suggested. "Or male and female. Either way, it confirms there's a breeding population. These aren't isolated individuals. They're a family group or pack." That changed everything. A single creature could be eliminated. A breeding population required a different approach, one that considered conservation, territorial management, and long-term coexistence. But after what they'd done to Marcus's group, could coexistence even be possible? Day 11, Marcus's warning. I visited Marcus again, bringing the footage and photographs. He watched the video 3 times, his expression growing increasingly dark. "That's it. That's what attacked us. But Marion, he pointed to the screen. Look at how it's studying the camera. Look at the intelligence in its eyes. This isn't just an animal acting on instinct. This thing is thinking, planning, learning. I know, which makes it more dangerous but also more fascinating. Marcus, if there's a breeding population, we can't just eliminate them. They might be a previously unknown species. They killed 3 people in my group, Marcus said, his voice hard. They're still out there, hunting. How many more people have to die before protection becomes irrelevant? I'm not saying we protect them without conditions. But we need to understand what they are, why they're attacking, whether coexistence is possible. It's not, Marcus said flatly. Marion, I know you've developed this philosophy of protecting cryptids, of letting mysteries remain mysterious. I respect that. But these creatures aren't the skunk ape or the night crawlers. They're apex predators that have decided humans are prey. That can't be tolerated. What if the attacks are territorial defense? What if humans are encroaching on their range and they're responding to perceived threats? Then they need to be relocated or eliminated. I'm sorry, Marion, but I've seen what they do. I've lost friends to these things. My sympathy for unknown species ends when they start killing people systematically. He was right and I knew it. But the cryptozoologist in me resisted the conclusion. Every unknown species was precious, potentially irreplaceable. The Dogman might be the only population of its kind. But how many human lives was that uniqueness worth? Day 12. Dr. Chen's check-in. That evening, I had a scheduled video call with Dr. Chen, my therapist. She'd been checking in every other day since I arrived in Wisconsin. How are you holding up? She asked. Physically, I'm fine. We're being careful, taking precautions. Mentally, I hesitated. I'm struggling with the ethics. We're dealing with something that's killing people, but it's also potentially a significant zoological discovery. I don't know how to balance those considerations. Let's set aside the zoological significance for a moment. How do you feel? Are you experiencing flashbacks? Anxiety? Obsessive thoughts? Some anxiety, especially during the night observation. But it's manageable. I'm not spiraling the way I did with the Wendigo. I think the preparation helped. Having support systems in place, knowing my limits, having an armed security person with me. That's good. But I want you to be honest about something. Are you staying because you genuinely believe you can help? Or because you feel you can't leave after Marcus asked for help? The question hit hard. Both, maybe? I do think I have expertise that's useful. But I also feel obligated. Marcus was there for me in Michigan. How can I abandon him now? Marion, obligation is a trap. You can be grateful for Marcus's help while still acknowledging that you don't owe him your safety or your mental health. If this investigation is pushing you into dangerous territory, psychologically or physically, you have permission to leave. I know, and I promise, if it gets to be too much, I will. What's your exit threshold? What has to happen for you to say enough? I thought about it. If I start having nightmares again, if I catch myself obsessing, unable to think about anything else, if the creature proves to be more dangerous than we can safely handle, or if I'm asked to do something that violates my ethics, like hunting it purely for elimination without attempting to understand it first. Those are good boundaries. Stick to them. After the call, I sat in my hotel room, thinking about what she'd said. The truth was, I was already feeling the pull of obsession. I kept reviewing the footage, analyzing the tracks, planning new observation strategies. The Dogman was fascinating, unlike anything I'd documented before. And that fascination was dangerous. It was how the Wendigo investigation had started spiraling. I needed to stay vigilant about my own mental state, not just the physical threats. Day 13, the interview. Deputy Voss arranged for me to interview Emily Brennan, the woman who'd survived an attack 2 months earlier while hiking with her boyfriend. She'd been reluctant to speak about the experience, but she agreed to meet after Voss explained my credentials. We met at her apartment in Rhinelander, about 40 miles south of Eagle River. Emily was in her late 20s, athletic, with a haunted quality in her eyes that I recognized, the look of someone who'd survived trauma. Emily, thank you for speaking with me. I know this is difficult. AB. Deputy Voss said you're researching what attacked us. She said you might actually believe me, which would be a nice change. MT, I believe you. I've investigated similar creatures in other states. Tell me what happened. EB. Jake and I were hiking in the Nicolet Forest on a marked trail in the middle of the day. We heard something big in the woods, moving parallel to the trail. Jake thought it was a bear, but I kept saying the movement was wrong, too fast, too sustained. Then it appeared ahead of us on the trail. At first, I thought it was a person in some kind of costume, which seemed weird but not scary. But as we got closer, I realized it wasn't a costume. It was real. MT, describe what you saw. Abby, it was huge. 7, maybe 8 feet tall. Covered in brownish-black fur. The head was like a wolf's, the snout, the ears, the teeth. But it was standing upright like a person, and the body was built like a weightlifter, all muscle. The arms were long, with hands that had claws. Jake grabbed my arm, and we backed away slowly. The thing watched us, and I swear it was smiling. Not like a dog smile, but like it was amused. Like it was enjoying our fear. Then it charged. We ran. I was a track athlete in college, and I've never run that fast in my life. But it was faster. Caught Jake first. I heard him scream, and I kept running. I'm not proud of that, but I kept running. MT, you did what you needed to survive. That's not shameful. EB. I made it to the parking area and my car. The creature followed me but stopped at the tree line, like it understood what a parking lot meant, what civilization meant. It watched me get in the car and drive away. When authorities went back, they found Jake's body. The official report said it was a bear attack, but I saw what happened. That was no bear. MT. Has the experience affected you since? Abby. I can't go into the woods anymore. Can't even look at trees without feeling panic. I have nightmares where I'm running, always running, and I can hear it behind me. Therapy helps, but some things change you fundamentally. This changed me. MT. Did you get any sense of why it attacked? Was it territorial, defensive, predatory? AB. It was hunting. That's what scared me most. It wasn't protecting cubs or defending territory. It was hunting US for sport or food or just because it could. The way it smiled before it charged. It was enjoying it. MT, one more question. When it stopped at the tree line, when it let you drive away, did it seem like it was choosing not to pursue further? AB, yes, definitely. Could have kept coming. Could have smashed through the car window or followed me onto the road. But it stopped like it had made a decision. Like it had boundaries it wouldn't cross. That intelligence was almost more frightening than the attack itself. After leaving Emily's apartment, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, processing. Her description matched everything else I'd heard. The size, the appearance, the intelligence, the predatory behavior. But her observation about boundaries was new and important. The creatures had rules. They hunted in the forest but stopped at roads and parking lots. That suggested understanding of human territory, possibly even a deliberate choice to avoid full confrontation with human civilization. That intelligence made them more dangerous but also potentially more manageable. If they understood boundaries, they could be contained. Day 14, the second night observation. Armed with Emily's information about the creature's territorial boundaries, I developed a new strategy. Instead of setting up deep in the forest where we'd be in their territory, we'd establish observation posts at the edges, near roads and trails where the creatures might patrol but feel less threatened. James was skeptical. If they avoid these areas, we won't see them. But they patrol the boundaries. They mark territory. Emily said the creature followed her to the parking lot. They venture to the edges, they just don't cross into full human territory. We set up along Forest Road 2178, a rarely traveled route that cut through the Nicolet Forest. Our position was at a wide shoulder with good visibility, cameras pointed at the tree line, thermal imaging equipment scanning for heat signatures. Around 11 p.m., the thermal equipment detected something. A large heat signature, approximately human-shaped but broader through the shoulders, moving through the trees parallel to the road. Contact, James whispered. Thermal shows one individual, approximately 60 yards into the tree line, moving northeast. I raised my night vision scope and scanned. After a moment, I saw it. A massive form moving between trees, upright and deliberate. It was pacing along the forest edge, staying just inside the tree line, occasionally stopping as if scenting the air or listening. "It's patrolling," I said, "just like Emily described. It knows the boundary." We watched for 15 minutes as the creature moved along the edge. Then it turned toward our position. For a moment, I thought it was going to approach, possibly confront us. Instead, it sat down. Just sat, on its haunches like a dog might, watching the road. Watching us. Through my night vision scope, I could see its face in remarkable detail. The muzzle was elongated, the nose black and prominent. The ears were pointed, mobile, tracking sounds. The eyes reflected the ambient light with that eerie green glow. And the expression, there was intelligence there, awareness. It knew we were watching. It was allowing us to watch. "Why isn't it attacking?" James asked. "We're vulnerable here. Because we're not in its territory. We're on the road in the human zone. It's observing, just like we're observing it." We maintained this strange standoff for nearly an hour. The creature sat and watched. We sat and watched back. My cameras recorded everything, the clearest footage of a dogman ever captured. Then, without warning, it stood and walked back into the forest, disappearing within seconds. The encounter was over. That was... James trailed off. "That was like meeting an intelligent being. Not an animal encounter. A meeting." "I know. That's what makes this so complicated." We collected the equipment and returned to town. The footage was extraordinary, clear views of the creature, multiple angles, extended duration. It showed a dogman in remarkable detail, behaving in ways that demonstrated high intelligence and possibly even curiosity. This was the evidence I needed. But showing it to authorities meant they'd want to eliminate the creature. And after watching it sit calmly, observing us without aggression, I wasn't sure that was the right response anymore. Day 15. The dilemma. I spent the morning reviewing all the footage and evidence I'd collected. Clear video of a dogman observing our camp. Footage of one sitting peacefully at the forest edge. Plaster casts of tracks showing a family group. Eyewitness accounts of attacks resulting in 3 deaths. Evidence of intelligence, territory boundaries, and pack behavior. The picture was complex and contradictory. These creatures were intelligent, capable of understanding human boundaries, and could clearly coexist peacefully when not threatened. But they'd also killed 3 people and attacked others. I called a meeting with Deputy Voss, James, and Gerald Hoffman to discuss our options. "The evidence is conclusive," Deputy Voss said. "We can prove these creatures exist. The question is what we do about it." "We eliminate them," James said bluntly. "They've proven they're dangerous. We organize a hunting party, track them down, and end the threat." "That's genocide," I protested. "We're talking about possibly the only population of an unknown species." "An unknown species that kills people," James countered. "Dr. Thatcher, I respect your work, but there's a line. When animals become man-eaters, they're eliminated. That's not controversial, it's necessary." Gerald Hoffman, who'd been quiet, finally spoke. "I've spent 30 years researching these creatures. I've seen them, tracked them, documented them, and I can tell you they're not mindless killers. They're territorial predators, yes, but so are bears and mountain lions, and we've learned to coexist with those species. Bears and mountain lions don't walk upright and hunt with coordinated pack tactics," Deputy Voss said. "No, but they do kill people occasionally, and we don't declare war on entire species because of isolated incidents. We manage the problem, relocate problem animals, restrict human access to dangerous areas, educate people about safe behavior in wildlife territory." "So what are you suggesting?" I asked. "I'm suggesting we approach this like wildlife management, not extermination. We document the population size, map their territory, establish no-go zones during peak activity periods, and only eliminate individuals that prove repeatedly aggressive. We can coexist with them if we're smart about it." It was a reasonable approach, but I could see the objections forming. That's a hard sell after 3 people have been killed, Deputy Voss said. 3 people who were deep in the creature's territory during hunting season, carrying weapons, probably making noise and attracting attention, Gerald said. I'm not blaming the victims, but context matters. These weren't attacks in campgrounds or on hiking trails. These were encounters in remote wilderness during times when the creatures might have felt threatened. Marcus's group was attacked in their camp, I said. That's not just territorial defense. No, it's not. Which suggests there may be a problem individual, a rogue that's more aggressive than the others. That individual needs to be dealt with. But condemning the entire population based on one rogue's behavior isn't scientific or ethical. We argued for another hour, but no consensus emerged. I could see merit in all the positions. James was right that public safety had to be the priority. Gerald was right that we needed to approach this scientifically. Deputy Voss was right that the authorities needed clear guidance. And I was right that eliminating an unknown species would be a tragedy. But being right about different things didn't give us a solution. Day 16, Marcus's perspective. I went back to the hospital to talk with Marcus. He was healing physically but remained psychologically scarred. When I explained the debate about how to proceed, his response was immediate. You're overthinking this, Marion. These things killed my friends. They hunted us deliberately. Whatever scientific value they have, it doesn't outweigh human lives. But if we can establish boundaries, restrict human access to their territory. For how long? Forever? You're talking about making huge sections of national forest off-limits permanently. That's not realistic. And what happens when they expand their territory? When the population grows and they need more space? Do we keep retreating? Humans and large predators have coexisted before. Grizzly bears. Wolves. Wolves don't have human-level intelligence and pack coordination. These things do. They're not animals, Marion. They're something else. Something that can't be managed with conventional wildlife approaches. He leaned forward, his expression intense. I'm Ojibwe. My people have stories about these creatures going back generations. And you know what those stories say? They say the Dogman is dangerous, that it should be avoided, that it's not something to be protected or preserved. Our ancestors knew this. Why can't you accept it? Because I've seen it sitting peacefully at the forest edge, just watching. I've seen evidence of intelligence and restraint. These aren't mindless killers. They killed 3 people in front of me, Marcus said, his voice hard. If that's restraint, I'd hate to see them unrestrained. We were at an impasse. Marcus was my friend, someone I respected and owed a debt to. But I couldn't abandon my principles just because he demanded it. I need more time, I said finally. One more observation, one more attempt to understand their behavior. If they prove to be consistently aggressive, if there's no possibility of managed coexistence, then I'll support elimination. But I need to be certain. How many more people have to die before you're certain? I didn't have an answer to that. Day 17, the decision point. That night, I called Dr. Chun for an emergency session. I was feeling the weight of competing obligations, the pressure of making decisions that could cost lives or cost a species. Marion, what you're experiencing is moral distress, she said. You're facing a situation where every choice has negative consequences. There's no right answer that satisfies all values. So what do? You accept that you can't satisfy everyone, including yourself. You make the best decision you can with the information you have, and you accept that it will be imperfect. Marcus wants elimination. Gerald wants conservation. I don't know what I want anymore. Yes, you do. You want to protect both human lives and an unknown species. You want a solution where nobody dies, not people, not creatures. But that may not be possible. Sometimes hard choices are hard because they're genuinely difficult, not because you're missing information. I keep thinking about the Wendigo. We eliminated those creatures and it solved the immediate problem. But I've wondered since, were there other options? Could we have relocated them, studied them, found a way to coexist? And I'll never know because we didn't try. We chose elimination, and whatever those creatures were, they're gone forever. I don't want to make that mistake again. Then don't. But also don't make the opposite mistake of protecting creatures at the cost of human lives. The middle path, if there is one, requires acknowledging that both lives and knowledge have value, and sometimes those values conflict. After the call, I made my decision. I would attempt one more direct observation, not from a distance, not from safety, but close enough to truly understand the creature's behavior and intentions. It was reckless, possibly stupid, but I needed to know beyond doubt what we were dealing with. If they were aggressive predators with no restraint, I'd support elimination. If they were intelligent beings capable of coexistence, I'd fight for conservation. But I needed to know for certain. Day 18, the encounter. I told no one about my plan. James would have tried to stop me. Deputy Voss would have forbid it. Marcus would have been furious. So I went alone, in the early morning hours, to the area where we'd observed the creature sitting at the forest edge. I carried a camera, a flashlight, and the pistol I still barely knew how to use. I left my vehicle at the road shoulder and walked into the forest, deliberately making noise, deliberately making my presence known. This was insane. Everything I'd learned in my investigations screamed that this was dangerous and reckless. But I'd spent my career seeking truth, and sometimes truth required taking risks others wouldn't take. I walked for 20 minutes into the forest, then stopped in a small clearing. Dawn was beginning to break, the light gray and uncertain. I sat on a fallen log and waited. It didn't take long. I heard movement in the trees, heavy, deliberate footsteps. Then I saw it emerge from the shadows. A dogman, the same one I'd observed sitting at the road, or one very similar. It was massive, easily 7.5 feet tall, covered in dark brown fur, with that distinctly wolf-like face. It stopped about 20 feet away and looked at me, not with animal curiosity, with intelligence and assessment. It was deciding what I intended, whether I was a threat. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Every survival instinct screamed at me to run, but I stayed still. I come here for this, to meet it not as predator and prey, but as two intelligent beings sharing space. I'm not here to hurt you, I said quietly. My voice sounded absurd in the silent forest. A human speaking to a creature that might not understand language but would certainly understand tone. I just want to understand. The dogman tilted its head slightly, a very dog-like gesture. Took a step closer. Then another. I could smell it now. A musky, animal scent but not unpleasant. I could see the details of its face. The black nose, the amber eyes, the teeth visible when it opened its mouth slightly. It was breathing heavily, its chest rising and falling. Not from exertion, from the same nervousness I felt. It was as uncertain about this encounter as I was. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity but was probably less than a minute. Then it did something I didn't expect. It sat down. Just like I'd seen it do at the road, it lowered itself onto its haunches, sitting in a very canine posture, watching me. The aggression, if there ever was any, drained from its body language. It was simply present, sharing the space. I slowly raised my camera and took a photograph. The click of the shutter made the creature's ears twitch, but it didn't move. I took another, and another. You're beautiful, I said softly. Whatever you are, you're remarkable. The creature's ears focused on my voice. It made a sound, not a growl or howl, but something softer, almost questioning. Communication, or at least an attempt at it. Then, from behind me, I heard another sound. Human voices, coming through the forest. Hikers or hunters approaching the area. The dogman heard them too. Its entire posture changed, from relaxed to alert, muscles tensing. It looked from me to the direction of the voices, then back to me. And then it did something that sealed my decision about what should happen to these creatures. It leaned forward slightly, made a low huffing sound. A warning, I realized, then stood and moved away into the forest. Not running in panic, but moving deliberately, disappearing with remarkable speed and silence. It had warned me. In its own way, it had communicated that danger was approaching, the danger of other humans finding us together, and it had left to protect itself and possibly to protect me from being found in a compromising situation. That was sophisticated social cognition. That was empathy or something very close to it. Day 19, the aftermath. I hiked back to my vehicle before the other hikers could see me. My hands were shaking, my mind racing. I just had a peaceful, communication-like interaction with a creature that everyone else wanted to hunt down and kill. I drove back to town and immediately called a meeting with everyone involved. Deputy Voss, James, Gerald Hoffman, and via speakerphone, Sheriff Kowalski from Michigan. I showed them the photographs from my encounter. Close-up, clear, undeniable images of a dogman sitting calmly in the forest. The detail was remarkable. You could see individual hairs in its fur, the structure of its claws, the intelligence in its eyes. "Marion, what the hell did you do?" James asked, his voice a mix of anger and concern. I needed to know. I needed to understand if these creatures were mindless killers or intelligent beings capable of peaceful coexistence. Now I know. And, Deputy Voss asked, they're intelligent. Highly intelligent. The creature could have attacked me. I was alone, unarmed effectively, completely vulnerable. Instead, it sat and observed. We had what I can only describe as a peaceful encounter. And when it heard other humans approaching, it warned me and left. That's not the behavior of a mindless predator. It's also not the behavior of the creature that killed 3 men in front of Marcus, Sheriff Kowalski said over the phone. No, which suggests we're dealing with individual variation. Just like humans, just like any intelligent species, some individuals are aggressive, some are peaceful. We don't condemn entire species based on the worst individuals. Gerald Hoffman was studying the photographs with something like reverence. This is remarkable work, Marion. This changes everything. With this evidence, we can make a case for protection, for conservation, for treating them as an endangered intelligent species rather than dangerous wildlife. Can we? Deputy Voss asked skeptically. 3 people are still dead. Their families still want justice. How do I tell them we're protecting the creatures that killed their loved ones? You tell them the truth, I said. That we're dealing with a population of intelligent beings, most of whom avoid humans. That we've identified problem individuals who need to be dealt with specifically. And that wholesale elimination would be both unethical and scientifically catastrophic. Marcus won't accept that, Sheriff Kowalski said. I know, but Marcus is traumatized. His judgment is clouded by grief and anger. That doesn't mean he's wrong to feel that way, but it does mean his feelings can't be the sole basis for policy decisions. We debated for hours. Eventually, a consensus emerged. We would share the evidence with state and federal wildlife authorities. We would advocate for the area to be designated as protected habitat. We would support targeted removal of aggressive individuals, specifically the one that attacked Marcus's group. We would develop guidelines for human activity in the area to minimize conflict. We would continue monitoring the population to ensure they weren't expanding into areas where human contact was likely. It wasn't a perfect solution. It wouldn't bring back the people who died. It wouldn't fully satisfy anyone's position. But it was the best compromise we could reach, one that acknowledged both the value of human life and the value of an unknown intelligent species. Day 20, Marcus's goodbye. I went to see Marcus one final time before leaving Wisconsin. He'd been told about my solo encounter and wasn't happy. You could have been killed, he said flatly. That was reckless and stupid. I know, but I had to know for certain. And now I do. Marcus, these creatures aren't all monsters. Most of them are just trying to survive in a world where humans are increasingly encroaching on their territory. Tell that to Tom's family. Tell that to the other men who died. I can't. Their deaths were tragic and inexcusable. But they were caused by specific individuals, not the entire species. We're going after the aggressive individuals. The one that attacked your group will be tracked and eliminated. But the others, the ones that avoid humans, that respect boundaries, they'll be protected. You're making a mistake. These things are too dangerous to coexist with. Maybe. Time will tell. But I'm not willing to commit genocide against an intelligent species without trying peaceful coexistence first. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. You've changed since Michigan. You're more cautious, more thoughtful. but you're also more stubborn about your principles. I'm not sure if that's growth or just different trauma responses. Maybe both. Marcus, I owe you a debt for Michigan. You helped me, protected me, supported me, but I can't repay that debt by abandoning my ethics. I hope you understand. I don't, but I respect it. And Marion, be careful. You're betting that these creatures will honor the boundaries you're establishing. If you're wrong, more people will die. That blood will be on your hands. I know. I'm prepared to live with that responsibility. We parted without full reconciliation. Some rifts don't heal easily. Day 22. Departure. Before leaving Wisconsin, I received a call from Dr. Elena Martinez, my contact from the Nightcrawler's investigation. Marion, I heard about what happened in Wisconsin. Are you okay? Physically, yes. Emotionally, it's complicated. I had to make some difficult decisions that not everyone agreed with. That's leadership. You followed your principles even when they were unpopular. That takes courage. Or stubbornness. I'm not always sure of the difference. There's a fine line. But Marion, I want you to know something. When you told me about the Wendigo investigation, about the trauma you experienced, I was worried you'd lost your passion for this work. But what you did in Wisconsin, standing between humans and an unknown species, advocating for coexistence, taking personal risks to understand rather than destroy, that's the best of cryptozoology. That's the work that matters. Thank you. That means a lot. What's next for you? Honestly, I don't know. I need time to process this, to recover, to figure out if I'm still capable of doing this work without it destroying me. Take all the time you need. And Marion, you did good work. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Conclusions. After 3 weeks in Wisconsin, I'm leaving with more questions than answers and a decision that will likely be controversial for years to come. The Dogman is real. I've documented them extensively. Clear photographs, video footage, physical evidence, and direct peaceful contact. They are large, wolf-like creatures that walk upright, demonstrate high intelligence, live in family groups, and have complex territorial behaviors. They are also dangerous. They've killed at least 3 people, attacked others, and shown capacity for coordinated hunting and aggression. The aggressive individuals represent a genuine threat to human safety. But they're not all aggressive. Most appear to avoid human contact, respect territorial boundaries, and show no interest in hunting humans. The attacks appear to be either territorial defense or the actions of specific problem individuals rather than species-wide behavior. My recommendation is protected status. The Dogman should be classified as an endangered intelligent species and given full legal protection. Habitat preservation. Core areas where they're known to reside should be designated as restricted access zones during peak activity periods. Targeted management. Aggressive individuals should be tracked and eliminated, but the broader population should be protected. Ongoing monitoring. The population should be studied long-term to understand their ecology, behavior, and needs. Public education. People who live near or recreate in Dogman territory need to understand the risks and how to minimize conflict. This approach won't satisfy everyone. Victims' families will feel justice hasn't been served. Conservation purists will object to any elimination. Local residents will want the threat completely removed. And Marcus will probably never forgive me. But it's the approach I believe is right, one that acknowledges both human safety concerns and the value of an unknown intelligent species. One that tries to find a middle path between protection and elimination. Epilogue. 3 months later. It's been 3 months since I left Wisconsin. The recommendations I made were partially adopted. The area has been designated as a management zone with restricted access during fall months, and a team of wildlife officers has been tasked with monitoring the Dogman population. The aggressive individual that attacked Marcus's group was tracked and killed 2 weeks after I left. DNA analysis confirmed it was male, approximately 12 years old, and showed signs of previous injuries that might have affected its behavior. A rogue, just as Gerald Hoffman had suggested. There have been no further attacks. The remaining Dogman population appears to be adhering to the boundaries established, avoiding areas of high human activity. Occasional sightings continue, but they're peaceful encounters. glimpses at distance, tracks found on trails, howls heard at night. Gerald Hoffman has been hired as a consultant to the wildlife management team. He sends me updates occasionally, photographs of tracks, recordings of howls. The creatures are there, surviving, coexisting. Marcus and I haven't spoken since I left. I've reached out twice, but he hasn't responded. That hurts more than I expected. But I understand his trauma is different from mine, and his path to healing may not include reconciliation with my decisions. Deputy Voss sent me a message last week. No incidents in 3 months. Your approach seems to be working. Still not sure I agree with protecting them, but I admit I was wrong about eliminating them all. Thank you for standing your ground. That helped. Personal reflection. The Wisconsin investigation tested me in ways I didn't expect. Unlike the Wendigo, where I was clearly in over my head and traumatized, this time I maintained better boundaries, better support, and better judgment. I didn't spiral into obsession. I didn't put myself in unnecessary danger beyond the calculated risk of the final encounter. I stayed grounded, but I also had to make a decision that will affect both human lives and an unknown species for years to come. That weight is heavy. I lie awake sometimes wondering if I made the right call, if my principles blinded me to practical realities, if my desire to protect mystery overrode common sense about public safety. Then I remember that creature sitting peacefully in the forest, watching me with intelligent eyes, warning me about approaching danger and choosing to leave rather than attack. I remember that moment of connection between two intelligent beings from different species. And I know I made the right choice. Not the easy choice, not the choice everyone agrees with, but the right one. The Dogman exists. They're dangerous when threatened or when individuals become aggressive. But they're also intelligent, complex, and capable of coexisting with humans if we respect their space and their nature. That's not a perfect outcome. But in cryptozoology, perfect outcomes are rare. Sometimes you just have to settle for better than the alternative. A letter to future researchers. If you're investigating the Dogman or similar aggressive cryptids, learn from my mistakes and my successes. Preparation is crucial. Have mental health support in place before you begin. Know your limits. Establish exit strategies. Don't work alone with aggressive species. I had James McAllister providing security, and that likely saved my life multiple times. Pride isn't worth dying for. Intelligence changes everything. If you're dealing with an intelligent species, your approach must acknowledge that intelligence. You're not studying a dumb animal, you're encountering another thinking being. Individual variation matters. Don't condemn entire species based on the actions of problem individuals. Humans don't want to be judged by our worst members. Extend that courtesy to other species. Coexistence is possible but requires boundaries. Intelligent species can understand and respect territorial boundaries if they're clearly established and consistently maintained. Document everything but share carefully. Clear evidence is valuable, but how you present it shapes public response. Be thoughtful about framing. Accept that you can't satisfy everyone. In situations involving danger and conservation, someone will always be unhappy with your decisions. That's inevitable. Trust your instincts but verify them with reason. My instinct during the encounter was that the creature wasn't immediately dangerous. That instinct proved correct, but it could easily have been wrong. Always have backup plans. Most importantly, remember that you're dealing with lives, human and non-human. Both matter. Neither should be sacrificed lightly. The weight of those decisions will stay with you long after the investigation ends. Final thoughts. I've now investigated 5 cryptids across 4 states. The lizard man ambiguous, mysterious, ultimately unknowable. The skunk ape clear evidence, choice to protect rather than expose. The Wendigo definitive proof, traumatic encounter, necessary elimination. The night crawlers, joyful witnessing, healing, respectful distance. The Dogman complex intelligence, difficult choices, attempted coexistence. Each taught me something different about cryptozoology, about ethics, about the relationship between knowledge and wisdom. The Dogman investigation was perhaps the most difficult because it required balancing competing goods, human safety and species preservation, rather than choosing between good and evil. There was no obvious right answer, just a series of imperfect options. I chose coexistence with management. Time will tell if that choice was wise or naive. But I can live with uncertainty. What I couldn't live with was eliminating an intelligent species without trying peaceful alternatives first. The Dogman is still out there, in the forests of Wisconsin and Michigan, living in the margins between wilderness and civilization. They're hunting deer, raising their young, respecting the boundaries we've established, and occasionally reminding humans that we're not the only intelligent species on this planet. That's both humbling and hopeful. The world is stranger than we know. The shadows hold mysteries we're only beginning to understand. And sometimes, if we're brave enough and patient enough and respectful enough, those mysteries let us glimpse them briefly before disappearing back into the dark. I'm grateful for those glimpses, even when they're frightening, even when they're difficult, even when they challenge everything I thought I knew. That's why I became a cryptozoologist. Not to solve all mysteries, but to stand at the edge of the known world and acknowledge that the unknown is vast, strange, and worth protecting. Dr. Marian Thatcher, independent cryptozoologist. January 2029. Some creatures hunt, some hide, some coexist. The wisdom is knowing which is which and acting accordingly. The Dogman taught me that intelligence demands respect, especially when it comes with claws and teeth. We share this world with more than we acknowledge. The question isn't whether they exist, but whether we're wise enough to live alongside them.